This is F.D. Recovery, where we interview addicts and alcoholics.
Our aim is that through this podcast, we might help you on your journey of recovery.
Thank you for listening. Hello, this is Frank with F.D. Recovery, and you are listening to the Weekly Intention. Thank you guys for tuning in. Last week was our weekly intention was self-worth. We'll go over that and how it worked in our week. And this week will be the topic of asking for help, right? So before we dive into that, let's talk a little bit about how self-worth worked in our week. And my week, I'm just getting over being sick, and I feel a lot better. Watched the Super Bowl, all that, right? And had a good time. Hopefully you guys' Super Bowl was awesome. Mine was. Hung out with the fam, and was pretty low key, right? Other than that, my self-worth, it was pretty even kill, right? I noticed once my self-worth or my self-esteem or my confidence gets a little thrown off, I end up getting in paranoid bouts, and that's when the fear creeps in, right? It's important to get yourself in a right state of mind every single day to kind of fight away the demon, right? And I do know that if I'm not careful and I'm not doing the things I know I need to do, I know my self-worth goes really down, right? My confidence gets shot. And if I'm not resting, eating well, then things can get pretty out of whack. And I kind of have to watch this stuff, right? Self-worth is building day to day, right? We talked about it in our meeting. We were saying, because it's tied to self-esteem, right? And if your self-esteem is off, right, and you're not doing, for self-esteem, you got to do esteemable acts. You have to do some, positive things in your life and other people's life, and it starts setting you on the right track, and you start doing esteemable acts, right? And then you start gaining a little confidence. People start trusting you. The world starts opening up in such a way that before it was really closed off, especially for me in drug addiction, right? There was no world where my confidence was really high. Maybe momentarily and brief and usually drug-induced, right? The liquid courage or the drug-induced courage, whatever you want to call it, right? But for the most part, there wasn't a world that true confidence was attached, right? And I realize when you're dealing with self-worth, confidence plays such a big factor in self-worth, guys. And I'll tell you little tricks that I've worked with my week and day-to-day week while working the spiritual principles self-worth, right? It's totally embedded in confidence, right? And I'm not talking about your egocentric confidence. I'm talking about real confidence, real power, right? The way power works, it's not embedded in all this egocentric worldly stuff, right? The way power works, true power is sitting in the truth of things, right? Sitting in the truth of who you are and your personality, and living with your values and your morals that are of a high calling, right? And I found myself, sitting back and going, okay, this whole talk of self-worth, what's it really all about, right? And then you start going, okay, let's talk about value, right? We put things in our whole life and what we do in this life, there's a whole value system, right? And let's talk about monetary, right? The worth. When you go into any kind of business deal, or maybe it's just grocery shopping, right? You look at the price of something, you realize, oh man, is it worth that much, right? Am I going to pay that? Do I find value in whatever I'm trying to purchase, or value in what I am trying to achieve in my life, and then you take it and you apply it like something like the monetary value and go, all right, self-worth, right? Where am I at as far as the value system? The things in my life and how I'm behaving? We talk about this spiritually in a sense, right? And we talk about it in a spiritual sense, and you go, okay, where are my values at? You know, are my values and my morals living up to the standard that would induce a self-worthy type vibe, right? You know, when I go to the store and I go, man, is it worth it? Is it worth putting out that money for this, right? And then I start going, okay, well, maybe it is. That's a good deal. So and so has it for this, you know. And then we start depicting what's worth what, right? And then when you take that kind of knowledge and you apply it in a spiritual sense, and you go, okay, is this worth having in my life? Am I allowing this thing to participate in my life in such a way that it's actually bringing worth, right? Is the cost of this worth it, right? And I start looking at things. Sorry if I went off a little, on a little tangent there, but like I start looking at things and more of a, is it working and is it worth it, right? Is the cost of what I'm behaving with or doing, is it worth the cost? Right. And then I start thinking of things like that. And then when I start applying that to my spiritual life and my God life and my ego life, and I go, okay, what's this ego stuff all about? Right. And I go, okay, is the cost of holding on to all this shit that we participate in with ego, is the cost really worth it? And you take a step back and you go, oh man, the things that I'm participating might not be adding to the confidence which I'm feeling and how I'm behaving in the world, because at what cost am I allowing myself, to be put out on all the crucifix of ego, right? And you're like, okay, what am I doing here? Is the cost of how I'm behaving and the cost of how I'm showing up in my life, the cost of all the arguments that I want to get in because right or wrong or whatever, is it really worth it? Right? You start creating this value system spiritually, and it's almost like, showing up in a shopping center going, okay, is it fucking worth it? Right? Am I going to spend and use the energy that I have within me in a spiritual way? Is the cost really up to the task, right? Am I going to, if you're going to look at this life in a monetary value system, and we're talking about spiritually, you go, okay, what's the cost? Right? And obviously you don't want to think about it in such a monetary, materialistic way, but it helps my brain to go, okay, what is the cost? What am I really forfeiting here? What's the exchange, right? And when talking about self-worth, I start realizing, okay, the value system and the morals and the ethics that I show up with are going to paint the picture of my destiny, right? So today I'm like, okay, I'm going to participate in life in a spiritual way. I'm going to bring God into the mix, because it's all fancy words and hearsay when the rubber meets the road, right? So today, in order to bring all this confidence about in my spiritual life, I have to show up and show the work, right? The work shows up in my life when connection with others is very clear. As soon as I connect with others, people know that I do the work. Basically, they know that I'm in on my free time, putting in the work, putting in the prayer, connecting with God. They know that because the way I treat them, right? And and it's important, right? Don't get me wrong, we all have bad days. I mean, I think my wife gets the worst end of it, and she's been so patient, but she's seen, she can attest from the way I used to be and the way I am now is a world of difference. But it's not just, because all this fancy shit just somehow came into my life and all of a sudden worked. And, and then thank God it was a miracle. No, man, it takes a lot of fucking work. It takes a lot of looking at yourself and allowing yourself to take that deep dive within yourself and look at those ugly parts of yourself. Because until then, right, you're playing in all ego, right? And in taking a step back and talking about self-worth, you got to realize interwoven and connectedness that has to all of it. If you're doing things in your daily life that is coming at a high cost of your spirit and high cost of your spiritual connection with God, then you have to reevaluate what you're participating in, what your morals look like, what your ethics look like, what your day to day. If you want to skim some off the top at your job, you want to do things in the dark, you want to hit up that person that you don't need to be hitting up. You want to be unfaithful to the people in your life, not necessarily just your lover, but unfaithful to people in your life, right? Showing up in an unauthentic way, being deceitful, whether it be at jobs or whether it be in recovery, what have you. It's important that we look at all this stuff because that's going to contribute to your self-worth, right? So let's get off of self-worth. Let's wrap the self-worth up with a simple asking of the universe and say, hey, this is what I do every single day, right? I ask my creator and I say, help me see the path, right? Do your will in my life, right? And this week was self-worth, right? And getting back to that focal point of trying to find the worth and through all this and stay above water, because things, trying to find your self-worth and through all the static, right? And not letting all the shit that goes on around you take you under, right? So today, find your self-worth. If you're struggling with self-worth, start doing esteemable acts, right? To build self-esteem, do esteemable acts. That was my big takeaway for this week was just simply that. You want good shit in your life, do good. It's that simple, right? And until I could incorporate that in my life, I was really causing my own problems. If you want something in your life, do more of that something and stay dedicated and stay, vigilant, right? So that's all I got on that. So let's switch over to asking for help. You would think that it would just be surrender or humility, right? But straight up, just straight to the point, asking for help. There's such a sweet surrender that comes with asking for help. Let's see what Let's see what Google has to say. Asking for help in recovery is a sign of strength, right? Not weakness. And it is essential for breaking the cycle of addiction or mental health struggles. Key steps include being honest and direct about your needs, reaching out to trusted friends, family, or professionals, and utilizing support groups. Our hotline, like 988. 988. That's important. If you're ever feeling suicidal, guys, reach out. There's a hotline for it. And also, please, if you're ever feeling suicidal or anything like that, know that you are loved. I know. And please reach out. The world is better with you in it. Please understand that, And this does have it has a special place in my heart, asking for help, because, there was a person in my life that was my best friend, and we grew really tight. And, unfortunately, the disease of addiction allowed him to get to a point in his life where he felt it was necessary to take his own life. And I watched that whole process, and I was really close to the family, and watching the destruction that it caused in his family's life from him taking his own life from a hanging. It was unrepairable. It still sends echoes through that family's life today, and the amount of damage that it did, and watching a mother grieve in just complete anguish, right? Because that was her baby, right? And watching the devastation that it caused to that family, it didn't do what he think, that it intended to, right? He wanted to end his suffering, maybe it ended that, but the damage that it caused to the people left behind was, it was unmistakably there and present and in all of our lives, right? So I urge you, if you're struggling and you're having a hard time reaching out or talking to people, please, the path that takes you leaves destruction for you and your whole family. Please, do not do a permanent solution for temporary problems, right? And that's the reality. So if you're struggling, and that's the biggest thing, is suicide is such a is I wasn't meaning talking about suicide, but this kind of just comes up naturally when we're talking about reaching out for help, because even if you're not gonna do something like suicide, there's a slow suicide in the disease of addiction, and how it just completely consumes us and takes us to that, that you know jails and institutions and death. There's bitter ends for all this for us addicts, right? And you know being direct, key strategies for asking for help include being direct and honest about struggles with addiction, mental health, or other challenges, expressing a desire for change, right? It's important. Open up, guys. If for you men out there, if you're struggling with your mental health, please, it's important to find a men's group. I and for you women, find a women's group. But for I could only speak on my experience of a man, because that's the only life I've ever known. Please, if you're struggling as a man, find a good local support group. Think places like Project Heart in the area, a men's meeting, a stag meeting for AA, something like that. It's important to find sponsorship, and finding another male in your life. And if you're female, it's good to find that on the opposite end too, right? Find a good female that you can connect with and share your struggles, right? Because it's important that we find connection through all this. Another thing is identifying a support network of trusted friends, family, professionals who can provide listening, encouragement, and practical help, right? Connecting therapists, contacting therapists, doctors, or treatment centers for structured support. That's important. Don't be afraid to utilize the help centers near you, right? Find your local support groups. They're super important. Therapy above all else. In all this, the 12 steps, do not close your path. Do not close your mind to any perceivable path of healing, right? I know so many people that, oh yeah, therapy's not for me, or those 12 steps, they're lame, or whatever. And they have no clue what it can provide, just if you have an open mind. So many people, I said, yeah, the 12 steps aren't for me, and then, they end up dead in a Kmart parking lot. And those are the tragic stories that I hear time and time again, of one person that I'm talking to 1 second, and then they're found dead, OD'd somewhere the next day, right? And just understand, and them coming into the meeting and just, me talking to them for an hour after the meeting, and and then just seeing that. I can't tell you how many times that I've talked to an addict, and the next day I find out of their passing. And so please do not close yourself off to any pathway of healing, right? They say that's, in the back of the book where it talks about the spiritual principle, and it says, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but it says there's one thing above all that will close us off, and that's contempt prior to investigation. Please don't hold contempt in your heart for anything. If you haven't experienced it firsthand and you haven't even gone through it, please do not close yourself off to it, because there's nothing worse in this life than ego. It'll stop you before you even start, right? So please, lessen the contempt in your heart and open yourself up to these paths, because it just might be what saves your ass, to be honest, right? It's what saved my ass. It took me 5 different rehabs to kind of open myself up and get to the place where I was receiving this information, and allowed the download of information that kept my ass alive, right? And make no mistake, because the way I used and what all this fentanyl that's floating around here, I'd be dead 100%. There's no doubt in my heart and in my mind. So thank God for another day clean and sober, right? And I know that people that are out there that are listening that walk through this path and know exactly what I'm talking about understand me when I say thank God. Thank God I'm not using. Thank God I am sober. Thank God that there is a way out of this through the 12 steps of AA and NA, right? And just recovery in general and support. All right. And it goes on, say, attending 12 steps or similar meetings to find community and shared experience. That's the most important part about this is that shared experience. It's just like, man, you ain't going to listen to some schmuck that, ain't really ever been through the same crap as you. That was a huge success story behind, well, God is a success story behind what's working in AA and NA, but there wasn't a solution for us alcoholics and addicts before 12 steps came along. The Oxford group came first and there was less steps, but then it, evolved into the 12 steps. There wasn't a solution, guys. Until this came along, we were pretty much done to the world. They wrote us off. And I can't tell you how many times I've came to the conclusion in my life that, man, I just might be wrote off. And thank God that there's something out here now that could actually help us, right? So prepare, and it says also preparing what to say using scripts such as I've been feeling low and could use your support and I need help with my recovery. That's pretty good, right? So what it's saying here is using scripts, right? Because sometimes that makes a lot of sense, right? I'm glad I read that because now I can probably get a couple scripts in my head if I'm ever feeling full of pride and don't want to reach out. That's a good little have something already written out that you could read or maybe that you can conjure up and that'll help break the ice, maybe to your sponsor if you're having a hard time or maybe asking someone to sponsor you saying, shit, man, I need help, right? And let's move on. Preparing. Let's see. Uh-oh. My computer is acting up. There we go. Back on track. Preparing what to say. Okay, we read that. Asking for simple things like going for coffee or checking in, right? I can't tell you how important it is to just check in. It doesn't even have to be anything crazy. All right. Everybody thinks you have to like contact each other and get on this spiritual plane and it has to be this way out experience. Like, no, man, call each other, reach out, just go for coffee, dude. Have that time to just be around another person. Have somebody in your life that you could reach out to, or maybe you could, or vice versa. Be that person or allow somebody to be that person for you, right? And just find that connection. Check in. Go for coffee. Coffee costs about $20, dude. Buy them coffee, buy yourself coffee, whatever you got to do. $20 is not even that. You can probably do it for cheaper, but I'm just, leaving room for inflation. It costs about $5 to $10. Let's be real, dude. Let's go to any coffee shop, and that's the best investment you'll find. Or even tacos, dude. Taco therapy, man, that takes it to the next level. You get with the person, and you're just, you get all that good food, the hot food starts kicking off the serotonins and all the good shit, right? It's important that we get connected, buy someone tacos or allow someone to buy tacos for you. If you're broke and you're in early recovery, ask a motherfucker, dude, that got some time. Hey man, you want to buy me some tacos? I'm not trying to be rude, but I kind of need some support and I need some food, right? It's important. Don't let your pride stop you, right? Even if it's just coffee. Hey, can you buy me some coffee? Whatever it takes, man. I'm telling you, reach out for fucking help. I cannot urge you. Like, the only reason I'm here today is because God, and I also reached out for help. And God put those people in my life that saved my ass, right? So it goes on to talk more about immediate support, which is a 988 for emergencies and suicide prevention. Please, guys, don't use that use that hotline. If you're ever feeling suicidal, please, tell you that, the what it leaves for the family. If you're thinking about suicide, you're thinking about ending it, please do not. The world is a better place with you. I love you guys. If you haven't been told I love you, just understand I do love you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I watched what it does, what suicide does, and it's a permanent solution for a temporary situation. Please do not end it. Right? I love you guys. Also, it goes on acknowledging that it is normal to fear judgment or rejection, right? It is normal. Most people are willing to help, right? We got to get over that hump of thinking that we're going to be some sort of burden on somebody. I know it's hard, right? Because that's the mindset we get in. We get in this mindset of like, man, I don't really want to, put anybody, don't want to be a burden. Don't want to be that person that just, we walk around with so much shame when we're coming in and when we're in our depression, whatever, right? We walk around with so much of it, and it's easy to start saying, man, I am not worth it. I'm a piece of shit, right? And the reason why I wanted to reach out or talk about reaching out for help is that self-worth, man. Sometimes our self-worth can get so low when we can get lost in the desperation or depression of things, and it can get overwhelming, right? And we get so afraid of fear, judgment, and rejection that it kills some of us addicts, right? So please, don't let the fear of judgment or rejection ever overshadow reaching out for help, because I promise you, people are a lot better than you think, especially when we're talking about the recovery world. People are a lot kinder than you think, right? And then also remember that recovery is a process, and that often requires external support to be successful, meaning it takes more than just us. It takes a village sometimes. So please reach out. Tell people exactly how they can help, such as reminding of healthy habits, listening, or helping avoid triggers, right? So there's a quick little breakdown of reaching out, asking for help. And so this week, if you're struggling and you can't quite get it on your own, please turn to someone and ask for help. And maybe if it's just an ear, maybe it's just a talk, maybe it's just for tacos, coffee, whatever, right? Ask for some help. It's important. You can't get out of the rut alone. I assure you, you're gonna have a tough time. So please reach out. You need external support. So this week, remember, reaching out and asking for help, right? Let's ask for help if we need it. Asking for help. So that is the topic for this week. I love you guys. You guys, the people that listen, it's not very many people, but for you guys that listen, I love you guys. And if you hear this, maybe recommend it to somebody that's struggling, right? I'm trying to get the word out here so it could reach as many people as possible. I love you guys. And remember, this week is asking for help. This is F.D. Recovery. Frank, I love you. We out. Stay sober. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to F.D. Recovery. A reminder, be kind to yourself on this journey of recovery. Also, call your sponsor. Get connected to local support groups. And for one day at a time, stay clean and sober.